The next tutorial shows you how you can modify your default PowerShell profile. Basically, a profile is think of it as a script that gets executed every time you load a new PowerShell session for a given user. So if you open a new PowerShell session, you can get access to the path. You can basically get a reference to the path of your profile file by typing in $profile. This is a reserved keyword, and this is going to print the path where PowerShell is expecting your profile file to be located at. So as you can see in here, it's under C users, my user, so currently I'm logged in as administrators, document Windows PowerShell profile.ps1. That file currently doesn't exist. It's just a string of text that says PowerShell is looking for it there. If it doesn't exist, PowerShell will just execute default profile. If it finds a file there, it's just going to go and execute all of the commands in there before doing anything else. So in my case, I do a lot of SharePoint. So almost every single script I create in PowerShell, I'll always go and do add ps snap in Microsoft SharePoint in PowerShell. This takes a lot of typing, and it also takes a lot of time for it to load, right? So it would make sense for me to put that in my profile so that every single time I open a new session, that command gets executed without me having to type it in. For the purpose of this tutorial, all we're going to do is modify the default look of the session. So for example, when I was writing the beginning PowerShell for SharePoint 2013 book, my editor asked me to change the default background color and front color of PowerShell to be having a white background with black text, right? Because it was easier for them to print it and it was more readable to the end users. However, PowerShell always has a blue background with white text, right? So for me, having to go and change the console look every single time I open the session didn't make sense. So I just put that in my profile, and this is what we're going to do here. So what I want to do is we're going to be calling in the new item commentlet. We're going to be passing it the profile. So remember, this is just a string. So we're saying create a new item at, and then the location of the profile. The type is just going to be a file, and then we're going to force it. So PowerShell is going to go in. By default, this Windows PowerShell folder doesn't exist as well. Having the force parameter in here, the force switch, is going to make sure that that folder, any folder in the path, gets created properly. So I run this, and there you go. So the file has been created. Now, if I just want to make sure and navigate to it, so Windows PowerShell, I go in here, and here's my profile file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Windows PowerShell ISC, and then I'm going to be calling the host variable, calling its UI method, and then the raw UI, and then I'm going to set the background color. Okay. So just because I'm feeling fancy, I'm going to be setting the background color to magenta, and I'm going to do the same thing now with the host UI and set the foreground color this time around. So raw UI dot foreground color equals, and I'm going to set that one to yellow just to make sure it's ugly as hell. So magenta background with yellow text. And then one thing you need to make sure of is when you play with the visual aspect of your PowerShell session, you always need to clear your screen after, so CLS, to make sure that everything gets refreshed. So now I'm going to save this, and now watch what happens when I'm going to go in and launch a new Windows PowerShell session. Boom, there you go. So my new profile has been applied, and now I have this pretty little pink and yellow window, and I can just go in and type in whatever I want. So this is now my PowerShell session. So hopefully you guys can find a more useful use to the profile file, but it basically allows you to define personal properties, personal preferences, and it's per users, right? So, and again, the same thing. If you ever use PowerShell Web Access, there's a way for you to define a profile on the remote server so that depending on what user you connect with, the session itself, the look of the session is gonna feel different, and it's gonna be consistent across every computer if you connect remotely. So hopefully you guys managed to learn a bit about PowerShell profiles in this video tutorial. Until next time.